Hey folks, this is Rebel Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tornado, Tony Petticoat.
And shut the tongue thing. Crystal ball, red hot.
Did your crystal ball see that broken eye socket last week?
Well, we got the winner right. That's
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Lots to talk about.
And I don't know if you guys saw the fight.
I did.
And
Yes.
I'm going to bring something up, from what I was seeing as a perspective, and then what I was hearing from the announce team, and what now, I know we had Carl Fox was there. He's a fellow British fighter, and so I was in there watching it. Now, what my perception was Billy Joe was boxing well, but for most of those rounds, funny when I think it got stopped after what was it, the ninth round?
After the eighth.
Yeah, after the eighth. Okay. So if I would have probably had it after 8 rounds, 6-2 in Canelo's favor, because a lot of, with Billy Joe was boxing well, but he was moving, he was using angles, he was, sometimes he was, herky-jerky, and he was,
He had to expend a lot of energy to do that.
Yeah, spending a lot of energy. He was doing a lot of that where he was using a lot of movement, but what he was not doing was landing a lot of meaningful punches. Now, he was a couple times he landed a couple good left hands and a couple good counter. Now, if I'm watching that fight and I'm thinking, Max Kellerman had said something about 20 or so years ago, and it really made a lot of sense to me. I know we've said it on the air before.
That's probably the last time he said something that made any sense.
What Max always says was, who would I rather be that round? And for most of those rounds, Billy Joe might have thrown, say, 50 punches and Canelo might have thrown 30. Billy Joe might have landed 25 punches and Canelo might have only landed 15. But Canelo's 15 were meaningful. He was landing some real hard body shots in there. He was landing some left hooks to the body. He was landing punches on the arm, which are technically not scoring punches. Well, tell a person who just got hit with one that that's not a scoring punch.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there saying, at most of those rounds, except for maybe the 5th or the 6th, I would have rather been Canelo. I think I had him up 4-0 at one point. And one guy was like, I have Saunders up 3 rounds to 1. I'm like, what the hell are you watching? I mean, like I said, he boxed well, but he wasn't, the one doing the work in there.
Well.
Yeah, and as far as, Tony, what do you think about that vague phrase, ring generalship? Who do you think was the boss most of the time?
Absolutely, Canelo.
Exactly. I mean, and I agree with you on the scores, except we may be different on. I actually gave Saunders a slight edge in round 1, gave him the 5th, and the 7th was close. I don't know, but it's if you want to say, I wouldn't argue too much, but I would agree with you. The 6 too. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, when they used to have the boxing matches on HBO, and they'd have Harold as the unofficial scorer. And he would always come out there and he'd saying, okay, the 4 bases of scoring a fight. Number 1, clean, effective punching. And then he would go to then it was like, clean, effective punching and a ring in there. And he goes, last but not least is like defense, which means like if nobody's landing anything, but you're more stylish, I guess. Okay, maybe you'll win on. I mean, that's a Willie Pep move, I guess. Mm-hmm. But clean, effective punching was always number 1, and that's what Canelo was doing. Like if you would have said, look at those shots. If you would have said, and I don't know the punch stats and all that, and I don't know who had landed more punches, but for most of those rounds, say Saunders landed 20 and Canelo 15, which one would you have rather taken? Would you have rather taken Saunders 20, or would you rather take Canelo's 5 less but more impactful? I would have taken Saunders 20. So
you really have a good point. Yeah, about that biased commentating. I didn't hear much because I had people calling me to tell them what was going on, so I was so busy talking to them that I really didn't hear much of the commentary, but you nailed it. And then I think that between calls, I was trying to find out what some of them were saying, and then like one, Saunders up by 3 rounds or something?
Yeah, I must have Carl Price. It doesn't surprise me.
I mean, now that's ridiculous. Like I said, I think 5-3. You know, giving Saunders 3 rounds is about as generous as anyone should have been in that. Way I've seen it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. But Canelo really solidified himself. What impressed me, and I'd have to go back to 1 or 2 of my previous articles, like when I would do the fight previews, and it might even been with the Danny Jacobs fight 2 years ago. One of the things I put at one of Canelo's weaknesses from earlier in his career was he was a stationary target, and he was easy to hit with lead right hand. I remember Oliveira hitting a lot of lead punches. Austin Trout, both being southpaws, hit him with a lot of lead punches. Mayweather would hit him with a lot of straight right hands. And I'm like, no, to me it was always a Canelo weakness. We went to that Danny Jacobs fight 2 years ago, and I remember thinking, okay, that's going to be Jacobs' key to win, would be his lead right hand, because Canelo's a stationary target. And I'm like, when did he start moving his upper body like that? And you could see his maturity and his, word you used a minute, generalship and defense improvements from early in his career to now. He's matured as a fighter, physically and, stylistically. And watching that fight, it was like his upper body movement was very impressive. And it's much more difficult to hit him with clean punches. Go back to the Jacobs fight, who was a good puncher. Go back to the Sergey Kovalev, who's a very dangerous puncher, and look at the punches that they were not able to land. Another thing Canelo has done, and I noticed it in the Kovalev fight, was when an opponent, whether they are southpaw like Saunders or conventional like Kovalev, was 1-2, a jab followed by a straight punch, whether left or right. They would step in to throw that. When they are throwing that second, Canelo is dropping down and landing a counter right to the solar plexus. He did that against Kovalev, and he was doing it a lot and very effectively.
So the question here is Caleb Plant like a slightly improved version of Saunders? A guy with some decent boxing skills, but not enough power to get attention.
Well, I mean, I look at it like this, okay? Because Canelo, he definitely, dominated the areas that he had to dominate that fight. But the real reason why he won, I believe, is because he had better defense. In the realm where, when he did get hit, it was when he was moving. When Saunders was getting hit, it was when he stopped moving, usually. And also, the hands-down defense does not work for certain people. Obviously the guy's undefeated, so he's had some success with it. But when you're going against a guy like Canelo, who has like 3 different types of defense, he's got the hands up, the head movement, the bobbing and weaving, the feinting, the slipping punches. Like, he has it all defensively. And he's not quite the complete package offensively, but when somebody has something that they do that's not conventional, he eats away at him. He just picks away at him. And that's what he did the other night. And that hands-down defense that Caleb Plant has is built around a phenomenal up jab. Whereas Billy Joe Saunders, I mean, that's not the up jab that really did the damage in his fight. It was more, the sneaky hooks that were just real wild and from outside that were connecting from, awkward angles. But really, most of his scoring punches were 1-2s. And they basically were landed on a moving Canelo almost every time. You know, his head was either moving or his body was moving. He was stepping back. He was moving at the waist. You know, everything was clicking defensively for Canelo. And the big mistake was that, you know, Billy Joe thought he could get away with fighting a world-class athlete with his hands at his chest most of the fight. And you just can't do that. You couldn't do it back in the day in boxing. You can't do it now. Like, certain people can get away with it.
Yeah.
But you have to have the skill set to match it.
Very few. The Ollie's, the Roy Jones Jr.'s, you know, these gifted genetic freaks can get away with it. They can break the rules. But 99 point plus, they can't. And so now Plant, on the bright side, I don't think Plant's going to run away from this. He has to make this fight.
But it could end up being like a bait and switch, you know, because Canelo's like, oh, this guy's hands down defense too. I'm going to treat him just like I did Billy Joe. And then it becomes a different story because he's got a completely different style, even though he does share that trait. So it could be like a bad thing.
Good point. Because I would think that fight, as Eddie Hearn said, there's really no other fight at this point.
Right.
Plant starts, if Plant would price himself out of it, he's pretty much shot his career in the foot. He has to take this fight. And Canelo, and I would think Plant's never backed away from anything, though. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to run. So,
and I like Caleb Plant, smart fighter, and right now, it's like, would you throw away a winning lottery ticket? You know, you are the cash cow of the sport. And you think, you know what? I mean, if his mentality, and you know, from hearing about Caleb Plant's backstory and all that, very inspiring young man, very well-schooled fighter, very confident fighter. So I think that'll be part of the reason that pushes him into taking this as well. He's well-schooled, and he believes in himself, which is great. You know, when you hear your name called, like Andrade was in the crowd with a shirt that said, Canelo and Saunders are both afraid of Boo-Boo. And they're all trying to get that winning lottery ticket.
Hold on.
If Canelo only stayed 5 or 6 more years, 2 more times a year.
Hold that thought. You know what Canelo said to Andrade?
No, the press
conference. Get the fuck out of here, man. Get the fuck out of here.
No, the
press conference. Get the fuck out of here, man. Get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here. It was in the middle of the press conference. That was Canelo.
Why in the world?
Canelo went off on Andrade.
Canelo to fight someone who is just not that well known. I mean, he's not a name. I'm not saying he's not a good fighter, but it would be a complicated situation. Plant's got the belt. Exactly.
He actually he had the exchange with Andrade, and Andrade asked a question, I think, or something. And when are you going to fight me? And not only did Canelo tell him to get the fuck out of there, he told him, "You're a horrible fighter. Why would I ever fight you?"
Wow.
Wow.
Here's what I see. If I'm going to borrow Tom's crystal ball right now, you know, I think a fight with Plant is logistically the fight's got to be made next. You know, unless something crazy happens in there. But that fight will happen. I don't Plant definitely got the boxing skills. I don't know if he has the punching power. And once again, beating Canelo by decision is a challenge. You really have to beat him up. After that, it would not surprise me to see what happens depending on the Beterbiev-Joe Smith fight that's going to be this fall. That wouldn't surprise me because you figure Canelo's management, very smart. You know, and I'm sure they're scouting that. Like, he already went up the light heavyweight for the title. But I'm sure they're scouting those two guys, and those are two pretty good names right now. But they both, in their last fights, showed serious flaws. Beterbiev didn't look great. Smith, he got a win, was cut pretty bad in that fight. So now it's like, you know what? I see a big, opportunity here. I see a big name I can put on my mantle. And now, I mean, it could be prime time picking for it, too.
Well, if Vieira wins, I think you're being optimistic, Tony. I hope you're right. But when Canelo went up to light heavyweight, and they said, well, the reason we picked Kovalev, he was the best at that weight division. Come on. Better than Callum Smith. Well, Callum Smith 168, I'm sorry. But, Kovalev was not the best 175-pounder.
No, not anymore.
At that point. And been through this with Canelo, no disrespect, but I mean, I don't know if it's the management. I don't think he's afraid to fight anyone. But I just wonder if Vieira goes back to being a monster and finishes Smith off, I wonder if that's going to give Canelo's brain trust a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's exactly. So say this fight happens, the Turbiev and Smith fight happens, and just for argument's sake, say the Turbiev wins. Yeah, he wins by stoppage. But he doesn't look good doing it. Maybe he gets knocked down. Maybe he really struggles. Maybe he gets beat up a little bit. Maybe it was a fluke knockout. Something crazy where he looks mortal. He looked mortal, and they said it could have been the fact that he was coming off having COVID months ago.
Hadn't fought in a year and a half or something like that.
He could have been busted. He could have been getting off the, recovered from the COVID. Didn't have John Scully in his corner because of the travel restrictions. 3 things that could have made him look ordinary, extraordinary. So now, say he turns around and he demolishes Joe Smith. I mean, roughs him up, beats him up, stops him. Canelo's brain trust him. He said, you know what, Nate? This guy get another year or 2 older before we call his. But if he looks mortal, that could be one of the things. This could be interesting. Now, another thing that I noticed last week, and I noticed in the Kovalev fight, that could play into Canelo's hand. Say if the Turbiev fight does happen. I said a minute ago, what Canelo has really gotten adapted doing is countering a 1-2 combination by ducking down and landing a counter right to the solar plexus. Very damaging punch, takes the breath out of you, takes the strength out of you. But Turbiev is a naturally aggressive fighter. He comes straight forward, so that could be an opportunity for Canelo to really sit down on power punching counters. That really could be a dynamite fight.
Well, I just think it depends, because you remember, all the talk about Triple G and Canelo years before it happened. And then we started to see Triple G go the distance, like with Danny Jacobs. And all of a sudden, okay, maybe he's aged out a bit. I mean, I'm just looking at history. But I hope you're right.
Yeah, somebody suggested maybe Edgar Berlanga would be the kind of guy that might challenge Canelo. But Edgar had his first friggin' full fight the other day.
That could be exciting.
I don't know if he's really ready for that kind of action.
Well, that's at least a year or 2 down the road.
Yeah. But it is interesting.
I would say 2 years to be realistic. If he stays active, he keeps looking impressive. Give him 2 years. And then don't forget David Benavidez.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really clamoring for the fight. I mean, I think that would be a dust-up we'd love to see too. So, and then that Cuban David Morrell, he's kind of untested, but he looks awful good so far. But again, that's even further down the road. So there's a lot going on. So hopefully Canelo will really be fighting the best. And I think he wants to.
Yeah, you get a mark of a great fighter. A great fighter wants to make his name fighting the best. That's why the four kings, are legendary now, because they fought each other and they were all great.
Right. Well, last Saturday we also had Kieran Conway be losing to Suleiman Sissoko. Elwin Soto beating Katsunari Takayama. Samuel Molina.
These people were horrible officiating. Lawrence Cole did in that fight.
Simeon? No, I didn't.
They have graded Lawrence Cole as maybe the worst referee in boxing, and he continually gets title fights because his father for the Texas Commission. That fight was very competitive. Takayama had, was moving up in weight. He was, a straw weight for the majority of his career at 105 pounds. Moved up. to the whopping 108 division, that whole 3 pounds difference. And the fight was very competitive. The fight was very, very competitive. And then, he got started a couple times early, but he was fighting back, and he was fighting back hard. He was winning some rounds, and then he was making competitive. And it was nice in the 10th round, he got hit with a 3-punch combination. He didn't buckle. He didn't go backwards. He got hit with a 1-2 and a hook, and Lawrence Cole stepped in and stopped it.
Oh, yeah, I did watch that fight. I watched that fight, too. And
then he got pissed off. He started doing, push-ups and shadow boxing. Like,
yeah.
Look, I'm fine.
Yeah, it was a very controversial stoppage.
The Cuban and the Dominican, where the guy put on an acting display like he could work in the WWE.
Yeah. Nutty. And let's see what we got coming up for this weekend. I know there's a big Lewis Neary fight, and there's not much else going on. It's kind of a slow boxing weekend. Let's see. Here's somebody's always got a go fight in Queensland, Australia. Not world beater records, but I think it's a female fight. These sound like female names, but I could be wrong. Heavyweights. Well, maybe it is a male fight. I don't know. Dempsey McKean. He is 18-0, or she. I don't know. This is strange times here, It could be a transgender for all we know. Fighting Kiki Toa Lutule, who is 7-0-2. 18-0 versus 7-0-2. Good luck there. That's really the only good one on that card. Up in Canada, decent main event there. The super lightweights. Steve Claggett, 29-6-2, fighting Matthew Germain, 18-2-1. I only say it that way because it's the French version of Matthew. They spell it Mathieu. You gotta say it differently, I guess. Dominican Republic, some interesting ones here. Starling Wilson Castillo, 13-0, fighting Abraham Peralta, who's 19-8. Not so competitive there, I guess. Also, featherweights, Juan Carlos Payano, 21-5, fighting Angelo Munoz, who is even 500, 18-18. And we go to Germany. Big main event there. Manuel Char, 31-4, fighting Christopher Lovejoy, who's undefeated, looking for win number 20. 19-0. Yeah, there's just not really a lot of good supporting fights on these cards. There's a couple good main events. Oh, this might be our mismatch of the week. Doesn't really have a losing record. There's a guy 2-0, Mikhail Kozletnov, fighting Artur Osipov, who's 16-3-1. Sort of a mismatch. We go to the UK. We got Lerone Richards, 14-0, fighting Giovanni De Carolis, who's 28-9-1. It's for the vacant EBU super middleweight title. We got Tommy McCarthy at cruiser, 17-2, fighting Alexandru Jur, who's 19-4. That's for the EBU cruiserweight title. And you've heard of Steve Cunningham, but did you know there's a Jason Cunningham, 28-6 at super bantamweight, fighting Gamal Yafai, who's 18-1. We got a light heavyweight. Somebody's always got to go for the WBA International Light Heavyweight title. 15-0 Daniel Blenda dos Santos, fighting Joshua Buatsi, who's 13-0. And here's the Neary fight. This is somebody's always got to go fight too in Carson, California. Broadcast on Showtime. We have Lewis Neary, who is 31-0. Big time Brit fighter there. It's another one where they're coming across the pond. He's fighting Brandon Figueroa, who's 21-0-1. And that draw did come as part of his last 6 fights. But this one's for a couple titles, the WBC and WBA Super Bantamweight title. And the WBA is the Super World Super Bantamweight title. Woohoo! Gotta love it. And we have Daniel Roman, 28-3-1 at Super Bantamweight as well, fighting Ricardo Espinoza Franco, who's 25-3. And if that's not enough, we have Xavier Martinez, 16-0, fighting Juan Carlos Burgos, who is 34-4-2. And a couple more supporting bouts. That's about it on that card. And we might actually have to do the find for the Jesus Fight of the Week. Oh, no Jesus fights on Saturday. It's a world record, apparently. I typed in Jesus to BoxRec for the entire page for Saturday, and nothing popped up. It's a miracle. Jesus is on strike this week. Alright, so we go to a little bit of some news here we got to cover about last week's victor and fighter that came off retirement. Obviously, he came out of retirement because he needed the money, apparently. Anthony Rumble Johnson won his main event fight in Bellator the other day. And when he got home, he got arrested. Because he happened to borrow someone else's credit card to pay for the plane ticket.
Borrow a credit card.
To get to the fight. And by borrow, I mean steal.
That was unbelievable. And it was an unbelievable fight. Did you see it, Rich?
Yeah, he got tested big time.
Well, you know, Tony, there's that old thing about having an eraser. And you can be behind, but when you've got that eraser, you know, it has that one-punch power. But that first round, I thought he was... Well, I thought that Augusto was done, but then he came back. Anthony was done.
Yeah.
What a first round that was. But I'll tell you what, you know, we didn't know who Jose was before that fight, but we do now.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Here, Anthony is thinking he's fighting in the small pond, and he goes up against a big fish.
I like that. I liked Jose's approach when he got in. He just looked like he was calm, and he had kind of he had his because he had his hands down a bit too. I know he was out of range of Anthony, but I'm thinking, oh boy, look out, you know. And I thought he was finished. And his head gets hurt. I mean, everything going wrong, but boy, did he turn it around! Wow.
Yeah, got the knockout in the second round, 1 minute and 30 seconds in, and just that right hand on that guy when he connects, it's just devastating.
Oh, it's over. It's over.
And, you know, obviously the ring rust played a factor, but I think it was more than anything, I think it was just, you know, that not knowing what to expect, you know, not having live action, and basically just... You know, probably taking it too easy, thinking, oh, well, this guy's only got a week's notice. I got all the experience, you know, this would be nothing. And it turned out to be something very difficult.
Sure did.
So, but he pulled it off, and as expected, he moves on. It doesn't look like it'll be serious enough of a court issue to stop him from fighting the next one, but...
Well, now with this first money, he can
pay the guy back. Yeah.
But you know, you gotta wonder what degree of desperation are you in to do something that lowbrow?
Yeah.
Something that classless. I mean, if he
who
really
can't
had one of these,
who can't you borrow from? That's the question. Like, why can't you borrow from any of your friends and family? I mean, are you that hard up that they don't believe you're going to come back with money to pay them back? Oh.
And the thing is, if he blew everything he made, because he's getting older now, so how much is he going to make? He'll just be broke in a few years anyways. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
a lot of my clients that want their refund quick. I said, why are you in a hurry? You're going to be broke a couple weeks later. What's the difference? Jeez.
But anyway, also the main event was very interesting. It went all 5 rounds, but Sergio had the more accurate striking, and he just seemed to be more all there. Archuleta was having to constantly stay out of range to do anything effective, and it was a very hard game for him to score points against a type of athlete that Pettis has become. He's obviously evolved. He's a very different fighter from his brother, and definitely showed some basic accuracy that I haven't seen a lot of from some of those lightweight fighters. And they went all 5 rounds, so you could pretty much see every aspect of their games, and rarely went to the ground. I mean, it was pretty much a kickboxing match for most of it, and Sergio was really impressive. Like, he didn't do any of the dynamic, like, jump off the cage kicks that his brother was famous for. He just went to the basics and just did a very good job of landing the more significant punches and showing the judges just enough each round to get the unanimous decision. And I reached out to one dude from Bellator, one of the PR people, but apparently I don't have enough pull to get Sergio back on the show. I didn't have the luxury of having an actual clip to show the guy either, though, so that might have been a problem, because it was posted on one of the outlets that is like gone off the internet now, so we can't get those broadcasts. But it was 10 years ago, almost to the day. It was 10 years ago in June that we interviewed him, so I figured we must have said to him, "Don't forget us when you're champion." We say that a lot when we get prospects on the show, so maybe I can find out from the email who we contacted to get him, who we ended up going through for that one, and we'll go through them again if he's still with them. Who knows? But yeah, that would be a great turn back the clock interview, and say, hey, remember when you were on our show 10 years ago? So it was cool to see that. It's like really one of the first times that's happened where we had like a young prospect. I guess the only other exception that's closer, well, it's sort of close to that, because I think Sergio only had like 3 fights at the time. But we had Sean Porter on the show when he was like 9-0.
Yeah, we had Sean Porter on the show, and we had Danny Garcia on the show.
Yeah.
Because I had just lucked into talking to him through, I think, probably MySpace.
Awesome. Yeah, we see a lot of people
my dad
from there.
had talked to his father a couple times, so.
Old MySpace.
Yeah.
Where have you gone? Now we're stuck with
Is
Facebook.
Is MySpace gone now? Is that
No,
completely
it's
dead, or is it?
It's still out there, but nobody uses it.
I
It's
don't
like
think so.
it's been used by
I
musicians.
lost my login probably like 5 years ago.
Justin
I
Timberlake
tried
bought
logging
it, the
in,
last I heard.
And
And-
it didn't work, and I was like, forget the shit.
So they've, when they used to have it running pretty hot and people were interested in it, they did have a section where you could put music and like play music on there. So they capitalized on that Facebook doesn't have that, and they've tried to make it into like a music community now. But there's still all the old profiles are on there. It's just like a shell of what they were, because some of the pictures don't work and some of the links don't work.
The messages don't work.
Yeah. None of my blog material is there.
Why did they collapse? And Facebook got so.
I don't know.
Educate me. I honestly don't know.
I think it was when Tom was the owner, and you were friends with Tom. Everybody was friends with Tom. Whoever, I don't remember what his last name really was, but he just called himself Tom.
I don't think he ever had a last name.
So then he sold the company for like millions of dollars and just got out of business entirely. He just went and started to explore the world. And I think that's when it started to kind of go downhill once corporate people got involved in it. And then Facebook started to go through the roof.
Was it a harder program to use than Facebook?
No, there was more stuff. I mean, there was more options. You could have a blog, you could have photos, you could have videos. I mean, it was a lot. And then you could do HTML on your page. Like, you could have a just real dynamic page that could take 20 minutes to load if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
So, I think it was a matter of the storage or something. It was too much. I don't know. They couldn't keep it
I
going.
remember about, MySpace. That probably about 3 years before I got Facebook. When I first got to MySpace, and you figure I had it for like 3 years. I had like 100 people on there, like 100 friends, 20 friends. I have like 1,000 plus on Facebook because it's more networking, I would say. With MySpace, one of the things that Rich said was great. Like, you could build a playlist. You could get up to like put a playlist in there of like 100 songs. And I know sometimes if I was at my and I open up my MySpace on my computer. This is before I had like an MP3 player, and music wasn't on your phones back then. So I would open up my MySpace. I'd put my 100 or so songs on, shuffle, and I would sit there and I would just look while I was working, which I thought was great. The other thing like you could do is like you could really put like graphics on there. Like if you want to find like different kind of GIF files or whatever. Say you found something of like an animation of Mike Tyson from Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Put that on your page so when someone opens your page, like there'd be this little Mike Tyson on there throwing an uppercut at you.
Like my little boxing guy that's on your sweatshirt.
Yeah, exactly. That's like you used to do like the little jabs and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to put that on your sweatshirt for a joke.
Background. So say like your page had like with like a black background with like kind of like astrological with like stars and all that stuff. Do this where it would flash, and it was like a lot of it was kind of gaudy. It was like stuff that teenagers would really like at the time. Then you had people that had more base there. But one of the things that stuck was like at the time you only had so many photos you could. So at the time, like you'd only have whatever. So then eventually they gave you unlimited photos. But instead of posting like a photo where it immediately, you would put it in an album, and people had to know to look at your page that you posted photos. With Facebook, it comes up in timeline. So I'm scrolling Facebook right now, and I could see Rich Bergeron posted these photos today of whatever, or another friend posted photos of whatever, or a video or something. Where Facebook, it's like you had to go and make a bulletin saying, hey, if you're interested, I posted photos of my Clearwater vacation if you want to look at them. And you had to post bulletins. And some days, like, some people the bulletins, so you might only see 10 bulletins. And the problem was, you're only seeing 10, and Joe Schmo thing 10 times, and now I missed what Rich posted. So that was one of the downfalls of it, and it got to the point when there were no more. You weren't getting friend requests from real people. You were getting them from bands, all types of media. So I would get like a friend request from some local independent band in like Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm like, well, why?
Yeah.
Friend. I don't.
Because you could put your own original music on the playlist too. So a lot of people, that's why how they marketed their bands, and that's kind of why it became what it is today, which is like a musician's community.
Exactly.
Because Facebook has still not offered that option of like putting songs on your page. Unless you do like a video, music video.
Tell you that, and who knows how MySpace has evolved? Because Facebook has obviously evolved a lot over the last 12 or 13 years that I've had it. Where now, guys, tonight I was on one page I'm on. It's like a public page. I made a comment like, hey, I was down. It was a Hulk Hogan. It was for Hulk Hogan's shop down in Florida, And I said, hey, man, I bought that shirt when I was down there. It's great. I like it. It's comfortable. Some guy comes on there and he's just saying all this like goofy shit. And I'm like, who the hell are you? Like, don't talk to me. And then he gets really mouth up. So I wanted to say, like, it was his profile picture was like him like doing like a bike stunt. I was like, yeah, take your stupid bike and go ride it off a cliff. I was about to type. Here's the thing: if you do that, that's like a threat.
Nah.
I'm like, this guy calling me like, who doesn't know me, is like now talking shit. But if I tell him to go ride his bike off a cliff, you're just saying I'm threatening him.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, his birthday today. Now I've known him since he was 10 years old, right? He's 25 now. I've known him since he was a little kid, and he and I bust each other's balls all the time. You know, and the one day he was saying something, I said, you know what? Give me 2 seconds. I'll drown you in 2 seconds with your mouth off to me again. I got a warning on that because I was threatening him. I said, listen, and they don't give you a chance to respond. I'm not threatening him. I know him. He's a friend of mine. You know, I would fight to the death for him. You know, but no, you're harassing and threatening. Get a chance to rebuttal. That's what pisses me off. Where, you know, MySpace may have eventually morphed into that as well, but that's a death. Facebook. I see people that get like, I was in Facebook jail for 3 days. What'd you do? I posted a picture of a cabinet I'm selling, and they said it's false advertising. So they banned me for 3 days.
Oh,
I had someone say that to me.
Yeah, I actually posted something on John Scully's thread about your mama and all the your mama jokes, you know. So I posted a couple on that. The first one didn't trigger any warnings, but the second one I put, like, your mama's so fat she irons her clothes in the driveway. And they flagged it as bullying. I was like, oh my God. This is a joke thing, you know.
Like,
nobody's getting bullied here.
Yo, it's not a threat. You're not making fun of John Scully's mother.
Yeah.
Don't even know. And I'm sure right back, you know, you as well. But yeah, it's like, oh, he's making a threat. But on the flip side, this is what pisses me off. You know, we've got one comedian that I went to see a few months ago, and I've talked to him a few times. He'll come out and say, listen, if you ever get anything that's saying it's from me that you want a prize, it's not
the
me.
scams.
And you get these scammers that go on there, and if you click on their not their link, but you know their handle, their user handle, instead of being Anthony Rodea, it's something like Salid Akmani or something, right? So you know it's some scammer, and they'll spell his name wrong. They're like, "You won this prize." So the one time I was messing with the one guy, he said, "You won this prize, whatever." I said, that's pretty awesome. I said, hey, you remember last week we met at your show up in Long Island? Obviously, the show wasn't in Long Island. And the guy said, yeah, if you come to the show, I'll do an autograph for you, and we'll take a photo and all that. I'm like, didn't you already do that last week? He's like, did you want the prize or not? I'm like, no, because you're a scammer. And then he deleted the comment. I just kept commenting on the delete, block me. I'm like, wow, I got a scammer to block me. But I would report those, and Facebook would be like, we can't find anything wrong with this. Yeah, you can, because he's impersonating that he's a celebrity, and he's trying to get you to sign up for something where he is not a celebrity, and he's faking and he's scamming people. So yes, there is something wrong. It's something much wrong than Rich Bergeron saying your mom is so fat.
Yeah, they won't weed out stuff like that. And the other thing that drives me nuts is they're advertising products on there that are complete garbage. It's a scam. It's a scam that they're even allowed to sell it. They should discontinue these products because they do not work. Like, case in point, there's this thing called Power Sharp. If you've ever run a chainsaw, you know that the best way to sharpen it is with a file or a chainsaw sharpener tool, right? You wouldn't take a chainsaw and go to one of those blocks that you use to sharpen knives and just run it back and forth against that type of sharpening device. It won't work. But yet they're selling this product that's not sold in stores anymore, mark you, that is supposed to have basically that type of file. It's curved at the end, and it's encased in this thing that goes on the tip of your chainsaw, and you push it against a rock, and then it forces the chain to go up against this sharpening stone. And it's like, I mean, literally, the only thing it sharpens is the tip area. So you have to tip cut almost everything to actually use this product. So every time it pops up, the advertisement and the videos, I'm always like, this is absolute junk. I try to flag it, but it still comes back. You know, and then it's like,
Yeah.
all right, these people are paying you advertising money. Obviously, that's why you don't want to remove it. But, I mean, you should have some standards. You shouldn't be trying to glorify people that, I mean, you can go elsewhere. Somebody else will pay that same price for something different that actually works. Like, I don't understand why you got to try to hawk stuff that people have been complaining about for years. Well, that's just one thing. I'm sure there's other things. Yeah, that's the biggest joke in the world. I fell for it. That's why I'm so pissed. Because I got one when they originally came out. It was like a Poulon thing. Went with the Poulon saw. So, yeah. I can speak from experience. It's junk. And they're still trying to make it look like it works. It's like, yeah, go drive your chainsaw into the dirt. You'll get a better result. Anyway.
We used to always have issues when we would work at the Christmas tree lot. Because, you know, we're working on, blacktop. And we have our chainsaws because we've got to cut the bottom of the trees. And you have people there that can't saws. And it's like, hey, why is the chainsaw so dull? Because numbnuts, every time he goes to cut a tree, he hits the ground and dulls the shit out of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get back to the MMA. Let's finish talking about Bellator. We got the rest of the card to talk about. Sergio got the win. Anthony got the win. Before that was just another one of those back and forth fights. Patricky Freire seemed to be pretty much in charge in round 1, and then Peter Queally came back in round 2 and just abominated him. Just totally overwhelmed him. Had the right strategy, and was really a shock, you know, because Patricky had been doing really good, you know, and not only did he do good in the first round, you know, prior to that he had won a few fights in a row, so this was kind of a shocker, but Peter Queally weathered the storm, so to speak, and got the job done. And then we had Michael Page versus Derek Anderson. Ooh, that was a brutal one. Derek basically tried to stay out of range, and again, hands down defense did not help this guy. He got kicked right in the middle of the nose and broke his nose immediately. As soon as he went back to the corner, they said, yep, it's broken. You can't fight anymore. But it was like so broken, there was like a dent in it. You know, you ever see one of those broken noses? Like right on the bridge of the nose, there was a dent. And I had to rewind it. It was so hilarious when the fucking doctor, after the fight, tried to put a Q-tip on the cut that was there. Like he put the Q-tip inside the dent. I was like, ooh, I could just feel the pain of that dude. But what happened was, the dude, Michael Page likes to do a lot of kicks, and he'll like kind of do the little dance before he does the actual kick. It's I don't know if it's a timing thing or, you know, a fast twitch muscle thing or what the strategy is behind that. If it's supposed to confuse the guy or it's a technique deal, but he does this little stutter step thing, and then he throws the kick. And Derek Anderson made the mistake of like bending down, thinking something else was coming, and he ended up headbutting the leg of Michael Page, basically. So yeah, a bad night for him. And you know, he didn't really look like he was hurting that bad, but boy, that was a horrible look. Not fun. Rafion Stotts before that, beating Josh Hill. Lorenz Larkin, that was a unanimous decision, by the way. Lorenz Larkin over Rafael Carvalho by split decision. Patrick Mix, also known as Patchy Mix, beating Albert Morales by arm triangle choke. That was 2 minutes and 40 seconds into round 3. And before that, Johnny Eblin over Daniel Madrid by knockout. 2 minutes and 44 seconds into that fight. And Johnny Campbell before that, beating our former guest, Henry Corrales, by rear naked choke. 4 minutes and 12 seconds into that one. So at least his face first offense didn't lose him that one. Johnny Soto in the second fight of the night, beating Weber Almeida, the UD. Eric Perez beating Blaine Shoot in the first fight of the night, also by UD. And then we've got no Bellator and no PFL for...
But we got to back... Yeah, I was going to say, we got to back up a night. What a controversy. Did you see that?
ESPN? UFC on ESPN? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I said back up a night. Well, actually, you did see it.
Oh, the PFL.
We had it on while we were doing...
Yeah.
What
the
a
Verdum.
controversy.
Yeah,
Huh?
the Verdum.
And you know, a trainer of mine was telling me about that, called the Brazilian. I think that's what we see. I remember that from years ago. He said, Tom, that's a Brazilian tap. Yeah. So
Yes,
apparently it has been overturned, but it should have given Fabrizio the victory, but they ruled it a no contest.
Really? I hadn't heard that.
It has been overturned. Yeah.
They must have found some video evidence that he tapped then.
Okay, but then why not give Verdum the...
Well...
That's what doesn't make sense. Why would they make it a no contest?
Well, it must be something in the rules. Like, you know, we had a situation with the horse race over the weekend, the Kentucky Derby, where the horse tested positive for a banned substance, but they don't strip his title. So, I mean, every sport has weird rules, and, you know, like once the thing is final, it's very hard to overturn and put it in the other win column. They might say it's it's a no event, no contest like they've done here, but it's so astronomically hard to get it transferred to the other guy winning. I mean, it's just the logistics. I think is just almost impossible to overcome.
But I think this was a good lesson that I'm surprised Verdun didn't know better, because you didn't. Early UFCs, Hoist Gracie would keep that on until the opponent was almost screaming.
Yeah.
The referee hadn't said stop. And I'm sorry, cold-blooded submissions are horrible. They can cause you permanent damage. But look at what happened here. I mean, he was a gentleman, and he paid the price for it. Maybe I'm just surprised he did. Unless he thought there was some kind of code of honor there. There was not.
Well, I think he had said he didn't want to be like those other guys that had been penalized for it, like Rusamar Palhares and holding the leg locks all the time.
Well, that was different. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean that was obvious after the referee pounded on him, and he still kept it on.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the difference. That guy should have been banned from that for everything. I think he has been. He should be in jail. I mean, that's different when you're really trying to wreck someone's career. But the minute you stop, you stop. But Verdun felt the tap and didn't stop. I mean, then he stopped, but the referee didn't see. I'm not even blaming the referee. It could have happened, but she won Verdun for that. I don't think they'll do that again.
Nope. Anyway, we had quite the UFC card last week. I picked almost every fight wrong. It's one of my worst nights for picks, and it didn't help that they took... I jinxed it. I totally jinxed her. That the Hill girl there, that they took the fight off the card. They completely took the fight off the card. I said, this girl's been trying to fight forever, and they keep canceling her fights. Remember I said that last week? So... the day of the fight, they take them off the card. I mean, literally, I'm looking at her name on the card when I make the pick that morning for my my fight picks, and then I go that night to check my scores, and the fight's gone. It's not even on the freaking fight card anymore. And I still haven't heard the reason why it was canceled. But yeah, that was a bummer. So automatically, I've got a tough hill to climb with a 0 on my card. So I have to have the 4 people to absolutely dominate. So let's see, I picked Ludovic Klein. He was the most expensive guy. He had quite the outstanding knockout record. He loses by unanimous decision. I picked Christian Aguilera on both cards. He loses by anaconda choke in round 1 to a guy who's only got experience in Brazil. Go figure there. Unreal. I put Nchukwi on one card. He loses by majority decision to Jun Young Park. And, the main reason why I didn't pick Jun Young Park was his nickname. I don't usually do this, but I was like, this guy is called the Iron Turtle. There's no way he's going to win. Yeah. Note to self. Don't let your nicknames fool you. Phil Hawes, I did pick right on one card. I put Kyle Daukas on the other, so it didn't really matter because I had such shitty picks around him. Gregor Gillespie, I had on one card. Diego Ferreira, I had on the other. It could have gone either way in the first round, but Gregor ended up taking charge in the second.
Now, were you able to see that one, Rich?
Yes, I watched that pretty closely. I was rooting for Diego, but he got gassed. Boy, did he get tired.
Yeah, and at some point, heart and conditioning, you can take the technicals and just throw them. Because after that first round, all those takedowns that Gillespie was doing, and those really gas you out. I mean, if you can't get them, he was getting them, but so what? It wasn't doing any good. But you know what came up in that, though? Did you see the weigh-in for that? How the opponent was 5 pounds heavier.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
At 160.
Yep.
And again, we're right back on this again, that guys are willing to pay 20% earnings are, to come in with a gigantic advantage like that. I mean, if you start finding them 80%, maybe this would stop.
He came in through the international version of the Ultimate Fighter, too, so it's not like he's new to the organization. He's been with the UFC for like 3 or 4 years. So that's very unprofessional on his part, too.
But I'd like to find out what the pressure. If we could get Gillespie on the show,
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask him what kind of pressure they put on you to take that. Because he had to struggle to make weight.
Yeah.
And this guy comes in, and by fight time, he had a 10-pound weight advantage. But Gregor just kept going. That was just pure. After that first round, he looked like some of the drunks in my neighborhood bar. Been in there about 6 hours.
Yeah.
They're staggering out, and running into poles. I mean, that's what he looked like. But I'll give him credit.
Yeah, tough guy.
It's an exciting fight.
Sometimes you just have to, let the guy gas himself out. The what do they call it?
Well, he's
like Homer Simpson in that one boxing episode. Where he lets the guy punch him until he gets tired.
He knew he was in good shape, and he said, "I was tired, but if I'm tired, how much worse is my opponent feeling?"
Yeah, that was a good quote. I remember him saying that. Then in the 6th fight of the night, we had Marcos Rogerio de Lima beating Maurice Green. And that was one of my good picks on one of my cards. That was one of my only good picks. And then Neil Magny. That was definitely one of my picks on one card. And then I did the opposite guy on the other card. But Neil got the job done. Definitely used his experience to his advantage. Took a little bit of time to get going and figure out his range, but once he did, Neil was very frustrated. I mean, there was really nothing the guy could do. He just looked like he was lost out there after like the second round, midway point of the second round, when Magny started to really get into his groove. And speaking of being lost,
Neil's hype train is derailed.
Yeah,
that's really derailed.
Yeah, he definitely did not have an answer. And Donald Cerrone, boy, what a letdown that was. I had him as my MVP on one of the cards, and that was not a very good result. 4 minutes and 40 seconds into round 1, he got TKO'd by Alex Morono who was a heavy underdog. He really didn't have a lot of UFC experience, and they threw out. I just saw this on Twitter not too long ago. This logic. They threw out Tyron Woodley for losing 4 fights in a row, but Donald Cerrone has lost 6 fights, and they Dana White says that he's got one more chance. And it's like
he's a fan favorite. Woodley was not a fan favorite.
Yeah,
That's
somebody
a simple solution.
made a great joke, and they said, "Yeah, it's because Cowboy has Dana White privilege."
Cowboy's old school. He's got a good fan base. He's been loyal. He's taken fights at short notice at any weight division. All these things Woodley's not. I mean, that's a ridiculous comparison, I think.
Yeah. But, you have to wonder where his head's at. Why can't compete at the level that he was competing at not too long ago?
Well, I mean, he's been around a long time. He goes back to the WEC days.
Yeah.
Way back when Knockout was had an hour-long show about him. I mean, back by 2007.
Right.
I mean, so all things come to an end, and he's just looked awful.
Yeah, Alex Morono, Anthony Pettis, Conor McGregor, Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson. I mean, obviously there's a very big names, but he's lost to all of them. Nico Price was a no contest. That would have been the 6th one. So I don't know why they say 6, but that was a no contest. 1, 2. Well, that's, I guess, because it's. Yeah. It must have been ruled a loss at first. Because it says overturned. But yeah, that's a lot in a row. But they're big names. I mean, at least you can give them that. This is like you got to put 2 more bums in front of them, or guys that aren't expected to win before you can throw them out. I guess. 38 years old, 36-16 with 2 no contests. He's finished 27 of 36 victories. He's gotten knocked out 8 times. Half of his losses. 1 submission. 7 decisions. So yeah, he's been around.
Well, I mean, he's come awful close, but right now you got to wonder what he's thinking. If he thinks his best days are ahead of him, I mean, wonder why he's keeping going. But I guess we all know that when it's in the blood, it's hard to stop.
Yeah. Well, this is usually when Dana White, if he doesn't really like the person, or if he, is really looking at the basics and reality, it's usually when he'll say, well, maybe the guy needs to retire, kind of like he was saying Chuck Liddell shouldn't fight ever again, and it turned out to be true when he fought Tito again. But, he doesn't do that with Donald. But partially, I think it might have a lot to do with the fact that he knows Donald takes fights when he's not prepared. He knows he'll do it at the drop of a dime, like you said. So he's created that loyalty factor, and also it gives him an out, for some of these losses. Like, well, I took it when I shouldn't have taken it. I did it for the money or whatever. He's just, and he spends his money so fast. Like, I remember one time he got Fight of the Night bonus, and he bought like a huge truck immediately, outright, brand new truck. Like, there's your $50,000 out the window. Immediately spends it. So I think that's where he gets into these situations where he has to take fights, just to get by. But we'd like to see him improve and get back to the winning ways, or get set up with a nice fight that we know he can win, and then just walk away with a positive note, if that's what he wants to do. But I hate to see the guy like that, get beaten up so badly. I mean, he was really tuned up in this one. I mean, the referee did stop it at a good time, but it was almost too late. to save him from any suffering. Because boy, he got his face rearranged a little bit in that one. But great night for Alex. I mean, he's definitely proven himself to be a guy with a lot of heart, and can weather the experience factor a little bit, and good dude. Anyway, Marina Rodriguez in the main event. No big surprise. She was one of my only good picks as well, and they had her in the main event MVP slot. This was pretty good. She scored me some good points, but not enough. And she looked pretty good with the kickboxing. Michelle picked it up later in the fight, and it wasn't necessarily because Marina got gassed, but it was just because she was suddenly landing kicks and finding her range. But it just was not enough. I mean, Marina's very technical. She's very smart about the way she fights, and she just would never let Michelle get any momentum going in those early rounds. And it was actually a very entertaining female fight, which it's not often that happens for a full 5 rounds. The females always kind of fight with that chip on their shoulder like they're doing it for all of womankind. But in this respect, they're main eventing. So they had that factor too. And, obviously a lot of talent between the two of them. And Michelle has a little bit more experience, but she's just gotten outclassed by some of these fighters with a little bit more power and different striking techniques. She's so karate based, that she really has to land a couple good head kicks or a lot of body kicks to go ahead on the cards, and she really couldn't find her range with those until late. So I kind of expected her to lose this one, but didn't expect it to go as long as it did. She's got a lot of heart, that's for sure. Not going anywhere. And that last thing we got to discuss is the big Chandler versus Oliveira fight card this weekend in Houston, Texas. This one, they're following up the big old stadium fight, the Canelo fight here, with another big blockbuster UFC event in Texas here at the Toyota Center this time. Charles Oliveira comes in at 30-8, fighting Michael Chandler, who's 22-5. Last time I tried to predict an Oliveira fight, I said that he was going to get mowed down by Tony Ferguson. And I really downplayed his abilities. And it turned out I was thinking he was the Brazilian cowboy, the other Oliveira. Different Oliveira, different first name, I believe. But anyway, I know who he really is now because he demolished Tony Ferguson pretty well. And now he's fighting Michael Chandler, who's 22-5, coming over from Bellator, but really just steamrolled his first opponent here in the UFC and started calling out anybody who's anybody. And it's looking like this is going to be one of the fights of the year here before it even starts, just based on styles alone. Chandler's one of those real fast starters. He's going to want to get in there and land his best shots in the first 30 seconds. Oliveira is one of those guys where he can beat you in striking, and he's almost guaranteed to beat you if it goes to the ground. And Chandler, I believe, has been choked out a few times, so that's going to be what he's going to have to watch out for primarily. And if he doesn't find his range, he's got a lot shorter reach than Oliveira. Oliveira's taller, he's got longer arms, longer legs. So he is really going to have to use his wrestling to, get some takedowns and then just jump right back off of him to dominate this one. So if he fires on all cylinders with his wrestling and he's intense in that first minute and a half, I'm gonna expect Chandler to win. But if it goes the distance, Oliveira all day. I don't think Chandler can last.
Yeah, that's very hard to argue with you. My crystal ball got a big grin on his face. Started nodding.
Yeah.
Yes. and that's coming to life now.
So, I mean, if I just had to pick it, just based on, overall skills and all that, I've got to go with Oliveira because he has more UFC experience. He's on a hell of a roll, and he's just looked perfect. I mean, granted, Tony Ferguson looked like a ghost when he fought him, but he still is Tony Ferguson. So, Chandler, he made a splash. He can be dominant, but I don't think he's been really tested by anybody like Oliveira recently. So I think it's gonna. If it goes more than one round, I'm gonna say Oliveira. If it ends in the first round, it's gonna be Chandler winning. Although I could be wrong. It could be some kind of a accidental situation where Chandler gets caught in a Oliveira submission early. But I really don't think Oliveira is going to figure it all out in the first round. He's going to have some difficulty. In the second, third round, he's going to take him to deep water. But I do think Chandler has that puncher's chance and could use his wrestling smart. But he's more likely to bury that, takedown attempt and get caught in a guillotine choke than he is to, win the fight with his wrestling. So I think it's really going to have to come down to the first minute and a half. He's going to have to just use his striking and just try to ruin him real quick. Get close range, make it uncomfortable, put him up against the cage. But I'm really excited about this. It's probably one of the best fights on paper we've seen in a long time. So, however it goes, I'm definitely going to have two cards with one on one side and one on the other guy on the other one. For this main event. And speaking of Tony Ferguson, he gets a second shot to redeem himself in the co-main event, coming in at 25-5 against Beneil Dariush, who's 24-1, and he actually, his last fight was the guy who just lost to Gregor Gillespie, Ferreira, and that was a rematch of one of their earlier fights. And boy, nothing changed except Beneil. He got better. Was just so technical, so dominant in that fight. Pretty much looked like a sparring match for him. He really didn't have to exercise much at all. Wasn't really looking like he was huffing and puffing. Just totally relaxed in there. So Ferguson's got a tough road here. I really like Beneil. I think he's putting it all together. He might be a little bit younger, and he's probably seen less damage. He's got a little bit less fights.
You got to think Ferguson's career is really on the line now. He desperately needs a win. Not even a great performance, just a win.
Yeah. Just something was so off about him. I mean, he literally looked like a ghost of his former self in that Oliveira fight. So he's got to wake up. Got to shake it off. Then we have a female fight, Caitlin Chikagian. She is 15-4, fighting Vivian Araujo, who is 10-2. Shane Burgos, 13-2, fighting Edson Barboza, 21-9. Matt Schnell, 15-5, fighting Rogerio Bontorin, who's 16-3. Ronaldo Souza, 26-9, fighting Andre Muniz, 20-4, right in the middle of the card there. We got Mike Grundy, 12-2, fighting Lando Venata, who is 11-5-2. And then we got the other Shevchenko in action, Antonina. She is 9-2, fighting Andrea Lee, who's 11-5. We got Jamie Pickett, 11-5, fighting Jordan Wright, who's 11-1. Another female fight here, Gina Mazzani, 7-4, fighting Priscilla Cachoeira, 9-3. A couple interesting, experienced fighters matched up here in the second fight of the night. Kevin Aguilar, 17-4, fighting Tucker Lutz, who's 11-1. The UFC's got so many fighters, such good experience. They don't have to put the people with less than 10 fights on the undercard anymore. Jeez. First fight of the night, Christos Giagos, he's 18-8, fighting Sean Soriano, who's 14-6. So that should be a good card. Calling it UFC 262. And I believe that's it for us for tonight. Let me just check the Google alerts real quick, see if I didn't miss any pressing stories. Alright, MMA. UFC legend Anderson Silva says he's likely done with MMA. That's a headline here. That doesn't mean that he won't go into boxing, though, because he is boxing Hector Camacho there. Or, no, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. coming up here in June. And we know he wanted to box Roy Jones Jr., so I'm sure that those talks will start up again if it goes well against Julio.
How many years ago were they proposing that fight? That's got to be a good...
like 5 or 6, easy.
More than that. I mean, Anderson Silva and Roy Jones, I mean, that had to be back at least 10. At least.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
Yeah, it was a while back. Alright, boxing. Joshua versus Fury set for August 14th in Saudi Arabia. Anthony Joshua was a big Billy Joe fan. Was pretty upset he saw his buddy lose the other night.
Well, like I said, even Tyson Fury was there, and he was talking, and he's pulling for his fellow British fighter. But I don't know if anything would have helped that night, aside from putting a couple baseball bats attached to his gloves.
Well, they definitely used every bit of that 22-foot ring. He was running around that sucker. Constantly moving. Alright, so I guess that's it. We got one boxing story here. We've got 6 qualifiers officially named to the 2021 now Olympics in Tokyo for boxing.
Yeah, they're bringing one, right? A smaller team. I mean, I guess, with COVID, and I was thinking about that earlier. They were bringing out, 6 guys. I was like, maybe some guys last year that may have qualified were like, we're not waiting another year, losing, a year of, in our professional ranks. So they might have just, jumped the pro.
Yep. First qualifier, Rashida Ellis. She's a lightweight from Lynn, Massachusetts. Won a bronze medal at the 2019 World Championships, and she's making her Olympic debut. 25 years old. I believe she fought on the Ireland card that I went to down there in Manchester, New Hampshire, a few years ago. But and we have Virginia Fuchs, Fuchs. I don't know how you say it. Futches? I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but yeah. She is 33 years old. Go ahead.
No, so what's sad about Olympic boxing anymore? I mean, obviously with the bad scoring, and I was just talking to a friend of mine tonight. He had posted a photo from the '76 Olympics. I think it was Howard Davis, who was a gold medalist. And he goes, he's like, say, being older than me, he would have been maybe 4 or 5 during the '76 Olympics. So he would have watched '76. 84, 2 great teams. '88 was a good team. But then starting around 2000. You couldn't find the fights anymore. I mean, you couldn't find them. Like, they're airing like 3 in the morning because the score in boxing has gotten so terrible. The fights aren't fun to watch. And I remember when I first really started getting into boxing, the first fix was 1988. Roy Jones, Riddick Bowe, Ray Mercer, those guys. And, I bought a magazine or a KO magazine, and it had each guy, and it broke down where they were from, their, amateur, accomplishment, and their toughest competition in the Olympics, and their chances of winning a medal. So you got to know those guys and be invested in them. The Olympics started. 92, like you were a fan of Oscar De La Hoya before it started. 96, you knew all about Vargas and Floyd Mayweather and David Reed and Antonio Tarver before it started. Right, like the last few Olympics, I couldn't tell you I couldn't tell you what weight classes they were in. And now I'm watching a pro card, and they're like, oh, this is so-and-so. He was in, representing the U.S. Olympics, whatever. And I'm like, oh, he did? I'm like, I don't remember him.
Yeah.
When they would have those, like, say, perfect example, the 96 team, and all those guys. A lot of those guys would then take fights on, say, Tuesday night fights. They're like, so they would say, hey, we have our main event tonight, it's a 10-round or whatever, but we're also going to feature Antonio Tarver and, a bronze medalist of the U.S. Olympics team in Atlanta, Georgia. So you were seeing these guys as soon as they turned pro, and you knew who Tarver was. You knew who Vargas was. You knew who Mayweather was. So you saw these guys, you followed them in the Olympics, and then you went right into the pro career.
Yeah. Different today. Very different. Okay, so the rest of the qualifiers, Naomi Graham. She's a middleweight from Fayetteville, North Carolina. For some reason, they list everybody else's age, but they don't list hers. And here's an interesting fact about her. She's team captain, and in August, she will be the first active female member of the military to compete for the United States in the Olympics. She's a staff sergeant in the Army and active duty, so that's very interesting. Freaking groundbreaking, I guess you could call it. Delonte Johnson also qualifying. He's one of the first males we've mentioned here. He's from Cleveland. Nice Tom territory out there in Ohio. 22 years old, makes it 4 Olympics in a row for this boxer. He follows Raynell Williams in 2008, Terrell Gasha in 2012, and Charles Conwell in 2016. I guess making it 4 Olympics. He's the 3rd ranked America's welterweight and 19th in the world. Came onto the scene in 2016 by winning a gold medal at the Youth World Championships. Finished 3rd at the 2019 Pan America Games. Then we got O'Shea Jones, women's welterweight, 23-year-old from Toledo, will represent Team USA in one of 2 new weight divisions on the women's side. She is already in the record book as the first Pan American Games welterweight gold medalist, winning a unanimous decision in 2019. And she's actually the daughter of Otha Jones, who's another boxer, professional boxer, I believe. And one of her 2 brothers, Rashawn. Both of her brothers have been professional. All right, and another male, Richard Torres Jr., super heavyweight. He's going to be 22 on June 1st from Tulare, California. Ranks number 1 among America's super heavyweights and 11th in the world. He will be the first U.S. boxer to compete in the men's super heavyweight division at the Olympics since 2012. So there it is. There's your first 6 qualifiers. And that about does it for us. Until next week. Thanks for stopping by.
All right, guys. Enjoy the fight. Have a great weekend as always. We'll talk next week.
Adios.